and I'm so happy to have Lesley here with us tonight. And she's from Nova Scotia, Canada. So our book club tonight is all about Canada and a little bit of the UK, I suppose, too. But I have to say, I looked up where Homeville is, because I have been to Nova Scotia several times, and I wasn't familiar with Homeville. But anyways, we look forward to having you chat with Wendy and with us, and I, according to this wonderful book, The Spoon Stealer, which I couldn't put down, actually. I really enjoyed reading it. And I know you've done a number of other books, and so we're here to hear your story and learn from you and get inspired by you. So thank you very much for making time to join us tonight.
Well, that sounds very exciting. It's lovely to
be. Wendy, shall I turn it over to you to
Sure
get things started?
Welcome everybody. We're really thrilled to have you here today, Lesley, because normally we just talk about the books, which everybody's I'm sure would be willing to talk about the book, but today we want to ask you a number of questions. One of the things that we do when we're choosing a book is we're looking for a book that has a strong sense of place, that so that our readers can actually put their feet on the ground in that particular area. And I think this book does it very well in the small town in Canada. Could you tell us a little bit about, now this was your 12th book. You have written many.
This is I've just finished my 17th book. Will be out in September. So I think I don't know. I can't remember.
So, first of all, can you tell us a little bit, when did you start writing and what has inspired you to write? What's your thesis of writing? I know you talk about the life of the ordinary. So,
yes. Well, I started writing novels when I was 50. So my youngest was out the door, and I finally had some time to do it. My family always called me the writer in the family because I lived in Cape Breton and everybody else was in Montreal. And so those were my two worlds. But my mom was from Cape Breton Island, and she would bring us down every summer because she was a kindergarten teacher. So we'd spend 2 months in Cape Breton every summer, and I just knew I was going to live here. And the ocean is just down that way, just a few steps, and the next port is France. Like we are right on the edge of Canada. And if you've never been to Cape Breton, it's a beautiful, beautiful spot. But yeah, my dad was a writer, but he wasn't a fiction writer. He was an editor and a publisher and did things with magazines and stuff like that. But I started to write just because I wanted to figure something out for myself. I'd always been, I loved libraries, and I always loved to read. And but I didn't ever really write anything other than maybe some diaries or things like that. But whenever I wanted to try to figure something out, I would always have to put it down because I always find I was always surprised with what I read. Is this the way I feel? Is this what this is about? Once you sort of take something off your body and you look at it outside yourself, I find it's a very enriching experience. And I never wrote to be published. I didn't care if I was ever published. It didn't bother me one bit. I just wrote that first book for myself because we had lost a little boy to sudden infant death 40 years ago, and we had a little boy, and then Joshua, and then he died, and then we went on to have Sarah, and I was so I had just always stayed home with my children. I mean, I went to university, and all my friends went off to jobs and this and that, and all I wanted to do was stay home and have babies. And I couldn't believe that this had happened to us. And after thousands of days of staring at his name written in granite, I thought, I need to bring him back. I need to find a place where I can get at him. So I wrote a story. Everything I ever wanted anybody to know about what it's like to lose a child is in that book. But it's also a funny book. It's not, that I couldn't have the main character didn't lose a baby. Her sister does, because I didn't want to live through it again. But that's what I was doing. I was trying to figure out why this has happened to us. And I always loved his name, Joshua, and I never got to use it. So to have his name, to be able to write it over and over and over again in a book was so wonderful for me. And now if ever I need him, he's in those pages. He lives in the pages, and I can get at him and put him to bed or do whatever with him. So that's why I wrote that story, and that's why I didn't care if anybody read it. But I liked the process so much that I ended up writing another one, and I had people bugging me to send it off to a publisher. And anyway, I did. And they got in touch with me and said, could you come to Halifax? And I said, well, that's a 5-hour drive away. Why would I want to come to Halifax? But anyway, so I walked in and they said, we want to publish both of your books. And I said, oh, that's okay. No, thanks. Because I didn't know what, publishing was about. I didn't know anything about it. So I just kind of walked away from it, and they still talk about that. And they got back to me like 2 months later or something. And my husband said, for heaven's sake, Lesley, just give it to them. So what? You sell 10 copies, big deal. And so look what's happened. Sometimes the worst things that can happen in your life bring something else. I'm still talking about Joshua 40 years later. He's still a big part of my life. And if I hadn't gone through that experience, I don't know if I would have written a story, to get that off my chest. So that's what I do. Basically all my books, I'm starting to realize, are just long-winded diaries. So whatever's on my mind is what I will write about. And the last book, I can't remember what my last book was. I think Death and Other Inconveniences, about a woman who loses her second husband. And she doesn't really like him very much anyway. So we don't care about Dick. His name is Dick for a reason. We don't care about him dying, but we care about what happens to her afterwards. And I wrote that because my husband's had a lot of medical issues. And just before his heart surgery, I was fiddling around with the remote one day. He said, Les, if something happens to me, you're never watching TV again. And I realized he was right, because I live here alone. I don't know how to work the TV remote. I don't know how to do the snowblower. I don't know how to do the generator. I do live in the middle of nowhere, just like in the book. That setting, Homeville, South Head, is just 2 minutes down the road from me. So yeah, I have a very keen sense of place with this. This is, I've lived here now for almost 50 years, and I've still love it. I just love it.
So what inspired you to write this book? I mean, The Spoon Stealers.
Oh, well, I didn't, you know what? I just, every so often something will happen. I'll start thinking about something. And I started thinking about Mary Poppins. And so Emmeline came to me sort of as that kind of a figure, some way, a little magical, a little, just a character. She was a real character. And I wanted her to live alone, which is why I brought in Vera, because it's very hard to have a character live alone, because they have to end up talking to somebody, whether it's the neighbor, hanging out clothes, doing whatever. But so I wanted Vera to be her sidekick. And anybody who's owned a pet, I mean, I think we talk to them, they talk back, they know exactly how you're feeling. And I just was so pleased that people came along with me for that ride. Because Vera is one of my favorite characters. I'd love to do wouldn't it be fun to have a cat? Can you imagine what a cat would say? But anyway, so yeah, I just had this idea of this woman, this older woman who, I don't know, she just came to me. And then I thought, okay, well, I'm going to have her be born in Nova Scotia, but if I want to get her overseas, and then I started remembering the story of my grandfather's sister. I didn't know a whole lot about it. I learned more as I went along, but that she had two brothers that went overseas in the First World War, and they both died. Um, but one of them was gassed in France and was sent over to England. I mean, sometimes they didn't die right away. You know, they succumbed maybe a couple of months later from lung issues and different things. And she was only like 21 or something, like back in 19, when was it? 1919. It wasn't 1918. 1919. So she was in the middle of the pandemic.
Mm.
And I didn't realize that. I didn't know that that was the date that she went. And now, not a lot of 21-year-old unmarried women went sailing across the ocean by themselves. But she was determined. She wanted to get to her brother. And he did die the night before she got there. So, so that was a family story. And I thought, wow, how heroic is that? I mean, I wouldn't even go. And it was so weird. I didn't know the pandemic was on the horizon when I was writing that book. Absolutely no idea. So when it came out and all this happened, I thought, oh my God, it's 100 years ago. This has happened to us before. It was really weird. It was really weird. And I really worked hard to try to get that book written before January 15th, because that was my first granddaughter was going to be born. And I knew when she arrived, well, that would be it. I wouldn't have any time left to write a story. But yeah, it was intense. It was intense. And I wanted to have these men, my grandfather's brothers, who we never got to grow up with. I just thought it was important to tell their story.
Yeah.
And
we're predominantly solo travelers here, and we loved hearing that that Emmeline's first trip was an unaccompanied voyage. You're right. She was only 21. She took off. What a spirit of adventure, even though, she snuck out of the house and that sort of thing. Have you been lucky enough to travel on your own? And if so, how old were you when you did your first solo trip?
well, I'm a big scaredy cat, unlike all of you ladies. I'm just kind of like in my own little nest here, and we have traveled, but by myself. The only time I guess I traveled by myself was when I was 18, and it wasn't very far. I just went from Montreal to Halifax. I wanted to go to Dalhousie University, so I set off with a suitcase with a rope wrapped around it because I have a picture, and I didn't even have a place to stay. I was hoping to get into the residence, Sheriff Hall, but there was no guarantees. So I can't believe my parents just let me go. Just say, okay, well, I'm sure you'll be fine. Your cousin lives, somewhere in Halifax, and if you have a problem, just call her. So that was it. So that was sort of my big adventure that I went into see the Dean of Women, and she actually said, "Oh yeah, okay, you can stay." You wouldn't have that nowadays.
No.
Of course, because this was back, when dinosaurs roamed the earth. So, yeah. But that's everything else I've done. I've traveled with somebody else.
Yeah, and my guess is you have been to England, because the description of the villages and that sort of thing was very real to life to me. And can you tell us all about the inspiration of the different personalities in the memoir writing group? What a group of ladies that was.
Well, that's the thing. When I start a book, I don't know how it's going to end. I don't know anything about it. I always pick the title first before I start a book, because that's sort of my little star that and I spend like a lot of time in this little room. And when you're spending a lot of time by yourself, sometimes you can get down a rabbit hole of some sort. So you need a title to remind you of what the story is going to be about. So when I decided to do the memoir thing, just because I thought it would be easier to meet Emmeline when she was older and then just talk about her childhood as we went along. And so when I needed those women for the memoir group, I thought, Les, what is every group that you've ever been invited to? Who were the personalities that are there? So you've always got the bossy one, right? Mm-hmm. In every group, there's always somebody who takes charge or takes over. Then there's always somebody who's really funny, and we all love that person. Then there's somebody who's usually shy and doesn't say very much. You know, it's just a microcosm of, women that I've met before. And so that's what I want. They ended up they had to be different. So that's how they were different. And I think about women that I've gone to meetings with, and I think I know these women. I've met them plenty of times.
I had that feeling as well, that I've been to, that, there's always that bossy one. There's always the shy one. I thought it was interesting also that there were sort of the cliques within the meeting, because that's true. I mean, that's kind of ordinary life. We do find those things. And another theme in the book is the mother-daughter relationship. It includes Emmeline's with her mother, and as well as her family, her extended family, and all of their relationships. Why was it this important for you to talk about mother-daughter relationships?
Well, there's nothing more complicated than a mother-daughter relationship. And since we all have a mother, I mean, we can all relate to, whatever happens. The mother, I had a wonderful relationship with my mother. So it was kind of hard for me to write this about Emmeline's mom. She wasn't a very demonstrative person, obviously, but she got worse as the time went on. And when she lost her two boys, people weren't given help that they needed, to deal with grief and to deal with things. And I also, I remember I met an older woman once, and she actually told me that she loved her sons more than she did her daughters. They were more important. And so, the son rose with these boys, but she could never understand Emmeline, because Emmeline wasn't the usual. She wasn't the type of daughter that did what the mother wanted, or she didn't have friends. She didn't have boyfriends, and her mother didn't know what to do with her. Basically, she was sort of she always had sort of worrying about her. So they didn't have a great relationship. But I was really, really pleased that Emmeline decided to stick up for herself. I mean, as awful as it was, I couldn't even imagine a scene where my mother's begging me to stay and I'm determined to go. I mean, she came back and looked after her mother for 10 years. And the family would have been very happy if she sat there for another 30 years and looked after, the woman. So they didn't have to deal with her. But Emmeline knew if she was going to get anywhere, and if she was, that relationship, and I didn't know that was going to happen to the mother. I never know what's going to happen. Things happen as I'm writing them, and so I didn't realize that would happen to her mother. That made me feel really bad, but it didn't stop me from writing it.
Her family jokes about using different words in different countries, like wireless versus radio. And what were some of the unexpected language differences that you've come across between two English-speaking countries?
Well, we've gone to England and Scotland and Wales, and we've several times. We have friends over there and whatever. And I always get it's always jarring whenever they say, I have to go to the toilet. They always say toilet instead of bathroom. And I mean, if I say loo and, the John or the whatever, and that's always funny, but to actually say the word toilet, we don't say that here. And I don't know, it's just always something that I pick up on, but I don't know why. But that's the only one that I could really think of.
And then let's talk a little bit about the gifts that Emmeline gave, the last round of gifts, all the significant people in her life. What inspired that? How did you come about? I mean, you talked about the Mary Poppins thing. I actually also was looking at her last name being Darling, so I was thinking in terms of Peter Pan as well.
Exactly. Oh, I'm glad you picked up on that. That's true. Yeah, I did that on purpose as well. Yeah. Well, it was, I love the fact that Well, she had this money and she wanted to, leave it for everyone. She wanted to give them something that their heart desired. Her Crewe had left her all this money and she didn't need it, but it gave her a lot of pleasure, and it would give me a lot of pleasure if I was in that, situation. I would love to, like, even though she felt badly, like, give her friend those false teeth. But that's what the woman needed. That's what she, really needed. And I was really happy writing that, and especially happy when Agatha didn't get anything.
Yes. Yes.
Because that's the thing, there's some people that you just cannot, you can try and try and try and you just can't get through to them. And even Emmeline couldn't get through to her. So she just had to give up. There's sometimes you just have to walk away and that's it. Uh, so to have her open that envelope thinking she was going to get something, I was really pleased when there was nothing there. I'm terrible. I love doing that's one thing about writing a book. So you can behave any way you want. I would never do that in probably in my own life. I would never say anything to anybody, or because I hate confrontation or anything like that. But boy, oh boy, I love a really rotten character, and so they can say whatever the heck they want. You get such a blast out of writing that. I love that. Love it.
When you were writing the book, did you learn anything new about Canada or England that surprised you?
Not Canada, but England is, well, we went, it's so funny because I went back to Leigh-on-Sea is where I placed the story, and that we had gone to Leigh-on-Sea before and we had met people that became friends there, and it's just a beautiful little spot. So I thought, if I'm going to have this in England, I'm going to put it in a place that I know, that I've been to. And so then I went on a little book tour, and I ended up reading from The Spoon Stealer in the Leigh-on-Sea library, where Emmeline read her, the memoir writing class was. It was really sort of a moment for me,
Yeah.
to know that I was reading that book in that library that I just made it up. It was kind of very cool. But I love England. I love them. And because then the people that we met who became good friends, we met them on the train. And we met the woman on the train, and she heard John and I talking and thought that maybe she wanted to know about Canada. And so we chatted and had this great old time, and she went home and told her husband she was going to Canada. And she was gonna but they all had to go on holiday with this couple that she met. And he thought she was bananas, but they did. They came over, and it was fun. And so we've been friends ever since. So I don't know. It's very cool.
What I'd like to do is now open the floor up to you, to the rest of the group, see what kind of questions you may have or comments you want to share about the book, or some of the questions that I've already posed. So anybody want to start off? Yeah, Mary Burke.
I love this book. It was so nostalgic for me, and you really maybe the other ladies feel the same way, but for example, when you talked about her mother's wooden spoon, it reminded me when my mother passed away before my father. When my father finally passed away and we were cleaning out the house, the only thing I wanted was her wooden spoon and her rolling pin. So that reminded me of that. And then another one, the word puttering. I hadn't heard that in ages, but I remember using that, hearing family members use that. And let's see. Oh, the wiping off the clothesline and the clothes that are blowing. That was so nostalgic for me, for my grandparents, both sets of grandparents. There were always clothes on the line. And I remember having to go out, my grandmother saying, Mary, go out and wipe down the clothesline. So yeah, so let's see. I think there was one more. Oh, and this humorous part about the toenails, because when My
Oh.
father, after surgery, came to recover with me, and I just his toenails were so gross and so long, and I remember calling my sister on the phone and saying, "I don't know what to do because Dad wants me to cut his toenails," and that's where I draw the line, and that was in your book. So thank you
Was
for
was
all the
it?
nostalgia.
See, I don't remember the toenail scene. I, I can't, I've got too many characters running around in my head. I can't. I believe you, but I can't remember how I had that. Anyway, yeah, but see the things that we all have in common, right? The rolling pin, the wooden spoon, the clotheslines. That's what people relate to.
Yeah.
Right? That's what they like to read. Yeah. So I'm glad you enjoyed it. Thank you.
Someone else want to have a comment? Well, I just loved the women in the memoir group. I enjoyed the story of the family, but it's the women in the memoir group that I just fascinated me. I was, always kind of keeping track of who's doing who and how, who's mad at who and how are they handling things together. And I just really liked the interplay that was constantly going on with that. And I also enjoyed the interaction between Vera and Emmeline.
Yes.
I will say that the first page or two, I didn't realize it was a dog.
I know.
Me too.
That was on
But then once I
purpose.
realized dog, and then it was like, oh, okay.
Oh, I figured after a while, if you called her Vera, you would think of her as a friend.
Right.
Yes,
So
exactly,
she was
exactly.
Emmeline's best friend.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I love that little dog. And it was based on a dog, my daughter's friend, little white dog. And she's just so cute.
Linda, did you have something?
Yeah, the thing that I was amazed at is Emmeline was a good person. She was always trying to lift everybody up and be very positive, even when things weren't positive. And yet she was stealing spoons. And it was just that juxtaposition between her hobby, if you want, and her personality and how the conflict was there. And it was interesting as the story built to learn what was behind it.
Yes, I did want her to, I didn't want her to be so goody two shoes that, and this is why I wanted her to steal spoons, because, it just made her a little more human in a way, especially when you realize why she's doing it. And, Teddy and feeling like, she needed, if only he'd had that spoon, he would have lived and
Right.
whatever. But yeah, I love the fact that she was stealing. I think like she wouldn't go to jail for it,
Yeah.
but it's not a very nice thing to do. So that pleased me very much.
Yeah,
And
I
that's why
think the scene,
sorry.
the scene when she was trying to steal the spoon at the library when they were having coffee. I just thought that was hysterical. I mean,
Mhm.
it was wonderful. It was very, very real. But yeah, great. Yeah.
Oh, good. Thank you. Yeah, I get a big kick out of writing stuff like that, those scenes. So, I figure if I'm laughing at it, other people are going to laugh at it too.
Elena.
Yeah.
First of all, I was amazed at how much research it seemed like you did to make the scenery in every one of the places that you traveled, the characters, especially about, it was Bernie, right? The young man that she took care of, the house of the wealthy people. It was really quite, it was so realistic that I just felt like I was there in every place that she was traveling to, and the people that she was helping, their personality was so well developed. What I thought was really lovely was the fact that it was her niece or her grandniece, I guess it was, who came in, and then they immediately clicked because she was so much like Emmeline, however you pronounce it. And that just added such a breath of fresh air that there was somebody in the family who really understood her and she really understood this young woman. but the bond that she had with the younger characters was really terrific, the young people in the family. And then the other thing that I thought was really interesting was the very end, which she had concealed from all of the actual people in her book group. But then her doctor and the niece found it out, of course, when they read the whole thing, was that she did have a relationship with the woman that she took care of. And that would explain a lot about her personality and about how she didn't really feel like she fit in. And of course, in those days in a rural area, anyone who was not openly heterosexual would not fit in.
Well, you know, it's funny because I didn't know that was going to happen either. I mean, I don't think to myself that Emmeline was a lesbian like from day one or anything.
Yeah.
I think it was when I wrote the scene when she meets the boy that she loved, when he comes to the house and she's introduced to his wife and everything. And I realized how she was so lonely. She was so lonely.
Right.
And I thought it was so mean, you know, that she was by herself. Everybody else had somebody. And then Crewe was there and loved her so much as a friend. And I thought she deserves to be loved by somebody. She spent her whole life loving everybody else. And so that's how that came. But of course, because it was in the 60s, she was smart enough to know she could tell her doctor and Louise, but she wasn't going to tell Mrs. Tucker or Una because of who they are. Like they probably wouldn't understand it. So why spill it and have, it would just, it felt safer, I'm sure, for her just to not say anything and just let them think what they think. But at least she did tell two people that she was very close to the truth. And but like I say, I had no idea that was going to happen. And it just felt right. It just felt, as I was writing it, I thought, okay, this just feels good. I like this. I like that they ended up their lives together. So I think that's what happens. You write and the characters take over and they tell you what they want to do.
Well, that's fascinating.
Thank you.
Well, the thing that I found just so wonderful, and now I understand, it's because you say you want people to relate, you can relate to it, but is that there are a lot of really dark and sad things within the lifetime. We all have those things that happen, but there was the overall, she was a survivor and she had this amazing sense of humor. And so I loved that there was a lightness and a happiness and a couple of really good chuckles along with the sad parts of certainly pretty dark and sad things that happened to her along the way and her family. No one was perfect. It was, I mean, as her disappointment with the I guess her great nephew, and the suicide of her mom and the death of her brothers and Bertie's, that whole thing. So there's some really heavy things that happen, and yet there was it was also a fun book. And when it was sad, and I've always thought that the best books, the best movies are when you both laugh and cry in the same little context of,
but I think that too, because that's life. You're crying in the morning and you're laughing in the afternoon. It's like a heartbeat goes up and down. We all go through tragic things, but if you're writing about your whole life, you can list all the tragic things that have ever happened to you. I can write about death because we've had a lot of loss and I know all about it. And because I know all about it, I can write it and people know that it's true. But I've also had a lot of love too, and laughter. So I know I can make people laugh as well. So, and that's the way I try to get through life. But yeah, it's not a hardship for me to write something sad because that's just part of this existence. There's lots of things that happen to you that you don't want to obviously have happen to you, but if you can take something from it, um, it's a good thing, I guess. I don't know what I'm saying.
One of the things she was in her 70s or 70, I guess. And so I thought it was interesting because being my age, she, many times when you're reading a book of where the main character is 70, they're either a little old lady or they're some dynamic movie star, glamorous type. This was just a real, regular 70-year-old woman. And I could really relate to her. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I certainly can't relate to a Hollywood type, that's for sure. I'm never going to be able to write that character because I have nothing in common with them. But yeah, I just loved her. I knew I just loved her, and I figured I just wanted her to. And it's so funny, because you can write these books and you never know what people are going to say or pick up. I have people that tell me they take my books into chemo so they can laugh, or they can take. I've just had the most heartbreaking, stories of some people that come up and say, "Oh my God, this is what touched us," or what the hell was I saying? I can't remember what I wanted to tell you. This is just part of. I'm going to be 70 in next month, so. What were you talking about?
You're talking about how people's reactions to you, those that come up and say how they loved the laughter you gave them, and also the negative, the tragedy.
Oh yes. It was for Emmeline. This woman came up to me. She was a nurse, and she said, when Emmeline said, how when the doctor told her she had heart failure, and she said, my heart's always been the best part of me.
Oh,
And she said, you know what? If when I see that on a chart from now on, I'm always going to think of that, because it is somebody's heart. It's not just, the pump that's broken.
Yeah.
It's anyway, she's just a sort of like almost made me cry the way she was describing it. She said, I can't believe that I've looked at that on a chart, heart failure, for years and years and years, and never had any kind of emotional, thing to it. And she said, as soon as she said that, it resonated with her for whatever. So that was nice. It's lovely to hear things like that.
Other questions? You want to tell us a little bit more about your more recent books and what we can look forward to in terms of some of the other ones we could look at from you?
Oh my gosh. Well, like I say, you can, if you want to go back to Montreal in the 60s, one of my book, Nosy Parker, is actually about a 12-year-old, because I was 12 in 1967 in Montreal during Expo 67. And my dad was a writer, and the father in this story, this book I wrote for my dad, because I thought I was about 12 books in, and I thought I've never dedicated one to Dad. Like, what is up with that? And then I knew if I did write a story, it would have to take place in Montreal because he was from there. I love that little story. I just love it. And I was worried about having the character be 12, because it's not a for kids so much as you look, what do they call it, kids, young fiction, I don't know what they.
Oh yeah, young adult type.
Yes, yeah. And it was my editor who said, Les, Kill a Mockingbird was from a 12-year-old's point of view. And I thought, okay, that's true. Not that I'm not comparing the two stories, but that's true. A 12-year-old does have something to say. You can tell a sort of serious story if you had to, from that child's point of view. And anyway, I just love that one. Nosy Park is really good. And then, they're all really good. You just have to go on my website. They're all there. I have a new one coming out in September, and it's based there. There's an island here just up the road from us. It's the largest island in Nova Scotia. And it's has an absolutely tragic history. I didn't realize how tragic, and until I started looking into it, because I wanted to do a story based on the people that lived there once upon a time when they were in the fisheries, and they were fishermen and their families, and it's kind of scary because there's still families here who have relatives who lived and died there. And I'm trying to, I keep telling them, look, it's fiction. I'm not writing a historical, everything's not going to be accurate, but I did put a lot of real things that happened in it. And it's told because there's so much to say about this island. I ended up, the narrator is a ghost. There's a spirit on the island. Because really Scattery, there's been so many people who have died there from shipwrecks.
Oh, wow.
And over the years, coming into Louisburg, they had the money that they were trying to give to the soldiers, the British and the French, and the ships would go down, and all the money would go down with them. And there were 3 wrecks. There were 1,000 people in 3 wrecks alone. And it's just like, I never in this most beautiful place, and you look at it in the summer and the water's twinkling and you have this most gorgeous spot, and it's got this history about it. Like, it just was sort of fascinating to me. So I think Scattery belongs to the living and the dead. So I thought this would be a good way to tell the story. So I think it's going to be good. You can look out for that one. It'll be called Spirit of Scattery. So
You said that's coming out in September?
yeah, September.
Okay.
I've just
Good.
about killed myself over that one because I've got I have a pinched nerve in my neck that I've always heard of people who say they have pinched nerve. I never knew what it entailed, but it's just absolutely miserable. And it was because I was writing 12 hours a day for 2 weeks at the end of it. I wanted to get this stuff done, and it was stupid. It was a stupid thing to do. So now I'm paying for it, and I can't even type. Like, this hand is useless. I can't type at all. So hopefully it'll resolve itself. But I mean, that's deadly for me, not to be able to type. I'm using the little microphone, and it types for you. But I mean, it says you say something and it'll give you another word, and you always got to go back and forth and then put period and exclamation point, and it's just awful. So that's how I'm editing this book, because of this nonsense. But anyway.
Now, once you finish a book, so once this one is edited and completely put to bed, do you take a break and before you start your next one, or what's the process? Nope.
Well, the last 5 books, I guess 5 or 6, have been 1 a year, and which is really kind of silly. But I think, oh well, if it's something that I enjoy, I just do it instead of knit. That's all. And I know my dad was he was a writer, and he got early onset Alzheimer's, and he was in his 60s, and I could just remember, and he never knew I wrote books. He died before my first book was published. But so there's a part of me that, like, write while I can until I get Alzheimer's myself. I want to write for him. You know what I mean? Because he had the most beautiful handwriting, and in words and thoughts and ideas were his whole life. And then he lost his voice, he lost everything. And I think, well, if I can still tell a story and put words to paper, I will. And the minute I don't want to do it, I won't. It's just going to be simple as that. So it's not like this is a career. I mean, I'm 70. Like, I've been doing this for 20 years. So I'm at 50 to 70, and I get such a kick out of, people say, well, how do you get published and all of this stuff? I said, being published has got nothing to do with anything. It's you need to be like, I went to a writers in school program. You go in and you talk to the kids, and there's always 1 or 2 in a classroom. You can tell that they're interested. The rest of them could care less. They're just happy their teacher's not there. And but you can always tell the ones that are interested. And I went into a grade 4 class, and this little boy came up to me. His name was Duncan. He said, "This is your lucky day. I'm a writer too." And I thought how perfect. That's what you have to do. You have to love the writing part of it. You know, if you want to put something down, then that's all you have to do. Write your best memories.
Mhm.
Write it for your family. Right. You know, my mother's lifetime, my grandmother's lifetime is not here anymore. You know, the world is gone. So I like to
Mhm.
write about the memories that I can remember. Like I love writing about the 40s and 50s because everybody smoked. And it's so
Mhm.
wonderful. You need to have your characters doing something. You know, so smoking and stubbing cigarettes and a phone when you could actually really bang it shut. And I just love, oh my God, you ever remember your grandmother's purse when she click? I mean, the
Yes.
click. It didn't have some stupid zipper. It's just like I love putting those kinds of details
Mhm.
in my books because they mean something to me. So
Well, and they really bring it alive to us when we're reading it. Yeah.
and everybody relates to it, so everybody knows, you know. So
Mm.
I'm glad you all enjoyed it. That makes me happy. Thank you.
Great. Well, as we come to a close, any final questions before we? So
It's not a
our next,
question. Oh,
yeah,
sorry.
sure. Heidi,
It's not a question. It was just a
no
comment of
comment. Yeah.
of a line that I underlined, given what we talk about with travel. And it says, I like to collect people in a way. I want to hear about another's experience in the world. So often we tend to stay in our own little spaces and never look around and see what's going on with the rest of humanity. And that really spoke to me because I think that's one of the reasons, you know, in our travel community that we talk about getting out and seeing the world.
Yep.
And I mean, the whole book spoke to me, but that one for me about why I enjoy travel, that
Yeah.
really spoke to me. So I underlined that.
Did Emmeline say that?
Um,
Like, was that in the book?
yes, it's in the book. It's on page 151. It's it is.
Remember any of this stuff?
It's been a little bit since I read the book, so I don't remember exactly. I'm looking to see. This is when she was reading chapters of her memoir out loud to people.
Oh.
But
Oh, cool. Yeah, it would relate to you gals.
For sure.
yeah, I'd have to read the whole page to figure out who said it. But
Doesn't matter. Oh, for heaven's sake! Well, that sounds good. I'm glad you like that. I wish I was like you guys. I just don't know if I'd ever have the courage to go anywhere by myself.
Well, we start small, you know, you go to a restaurant by yourself and get comfortable with that. Go to the next town over, try that. Go to the next province over, you know. So you sort of learn, you know, spread your wings slowly, and then pretty soon you're hooked. And
Well,
all over the
your
world.
group though, you have like I was looking through your stuff
Yeah.
and you can travel with others too though, right? You have
Yes.
you know for women who
Yeah,
don't want
both
to
alone
travel.
and with groups. Yep. Yep.
Yeah, I think that would be wonderful. I mean, I think
Yeah.
it's a perfect thing to do, obviously.
Yeah, there are a lot of, we actually have a women's travel director, and there are quite a few writing retreats and creative retreats and all kinds of interesting, you know, photography, drawing, art. So
Good.
it's not necessarily traveling necessarily, could be just getting together with women and doing something. I think we just had an email go out with knitting retreats in it as well, if I'm not mistaken. So so yeah, there's all kinds of stuff happening. Yeah.
Well, you guys are certainly an inspiration, that's for sure. So you never know. You might see me at some point if I ever come to
Good.
the island. Anyway, well, thanks for inviting me for this thing. It was just
Well, thank you so much for coming.
Thank
We really appreciate it.
you.
Yes.
I hope I didn't bore you completely.
No, no, no.
Great.
And then remember, in our next book coming up is set in South Africa, and
Is it Sally Andrews? Is that? I just put it on hold today.
it's a mystery.
Is it recipes for love and
Yes,
Yes.
recipes for murder. Yes,
Yeah.
and
so I don't go in the blurry part?
yeah,
What's wrong? There you go. It's this
yeah,
recipe.
recipes for murder set in South Africa. You will find, and Sally and I had several discussions about this. You know, there are a number of South African words in it, but I think by context, you'll be able to pick up what they mean. And I think it actually adds flavor of the location. So just be aware of that. And also, there happens to be, I would not suggest watching it first. Read the book first. There is a TV series based on this particular book that follows fairly closely, but I would suggest very strongly that you read the book first, because I read the book, and then when I saw the TV series, I didn't even realize at first it was the same place, because I had imagined the characters looking different, the houses different, the yards different, and so you don't want to be colored by the network's idea of what it should look like. You use your own imagination to pull that in.
It's always best.
Good point.
All right,
And
my
we will
dear.
see you in a few
Goodbye. I'm gonna
months.
say goodbye.
Thank you again,
Okay.
Leslie. We
Thank
appreciate
you.
it.
Thank you so
All
much,
right.
Thank you.
Lesley.
Thank you.
All right, everybody. Bye-bye. We'll see you in a few months. Very
Yeah,
good.
thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thanks for
Thank
coming.
you.
Thanks.
Nice to see everybody again. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.